Thank you guys for joining us this morning. Luckily, you won't have to hear me for very long. I'm going to have just a few minutes at the end. But we are thrilled to have Lisa Helton with us here today. She is an information security officer with the community college system. And we are lucky enough to have her stationed on our campus so that if we need her, she's always close by. And she was nice enough to do a cybersecurity tabletop exercise for us this past summer. Some of you got to participate in that. And the response was so good that we asked her if she would come back and do an abbreviated version of it for professional development. So I'm thrilled to have her, and I'm going to turn it over to her.
Look at all you people on the back wall. Hey. You know what? I used to sit up there many years ago. I did. So for those of you that do not know me, I affectionately call Caldwell my home. And the reason for that is I worked here for 20 plus years. The majority of it was in IT. And then I moved on a few years ago, and now I'm at the system office. But hello to the background people. Okay, so today, it's like I was telling one of you, I think it was Allison. I was telling Allison, I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to get up there and I'm going to wing it. So hopefully it won't be too boring for you. What I hope that we can get out of this today is just making you aware of cybersecurity issues through all of the college systems, and making you aware of proactive measures and what your roles are and how you can help the college stay safe. So I'll actually go through the agenda here, but I've got like 2 videos from 2 additional colleges that actually suffered ransomware attacks. So you get some firsthand knowledge of how it actually affects a college system. So we'll get started. So your agenda, basically you can see I'm going to go over the community college systems. I'm actually going to talk about a few of the ransomware attacks that have happened to community colleges. I'm going to talk about some of the dark web credentials that we've actually seen here for Caldwell. The impacts, how it's actually impacted, cybersecurity's impacted colleges in general. And then I'm going to walk you through a ransomware tabletop exercise. We actually slimmed this down to be able to fit it in this presentation, so we'll probably hit that pretty fast and furious. And then proactive measures, lessons learned, and then after that I believe Susan's got a few slides that she wants to present as well. So this one I love. Who does not love the International Man of Mystery? The Dos Equis guy. Woo! So cybersecurity should be a top priority. As you can see, he says, I don't always think about cybersecurity, but when I do, it's usually too late. And the sad part about that is completely true. It's normally too late. This slide, unfortunately, when I was putting this together, spans over 3. And you really don't think about how cybersecurity and ransomware issues affect colleges until you see it in the timeline method. These red events, which may look orange, are actual events. That is where systems were compromised, data was exfiltrated, and colleges were down for a time frame. The first one started in July of 2019. Richmond Community College came in one day. Portions of their network was down, and their systems were encrypted. And it actually affected colleague. They were the first college that was actually moved into a cloud environment, and the system office helped them go through that process. Richmond, to this day, if you speak to their CIO, he will tell you they are not 100%. They are still recovering from 2019. They are still having issues. Not as bad as it was in the very beginning, but they're still having issues. They were closed for a period of weeks. The second one, August of 2020, was Piedmont Community College. They were migrated over to AWS, same as Richmond. They came in. Piedmont did not have portions of their network down when they came in, I think their website may have been defaced, but they definitely had some issues, so they were migrated. September of 2022, Guilford Tech, September 13th. Now that's not even a month, 2 community colleges were affected. February of 2021, Central Piedmont. They were able to recover on premise, which was really good. But all of these colleges will tell you, and you'll listen to them here in a little bit, they will tell you that they're still in recovery mode. I don't think you ever 100% fully recover from a ransomware attack. Additional stuff that's just mentioned on here is stuff that we've seen at the system office. We've dealt with some fake job emails that have went around, compromised student information, college websites being defaced. One thing I guess I should mention, the colleges that had the ransomware attacks actually had the National Guard deployed on site to help them get their systems back up and online. So that's the first slide. Here's the additional slide. We had 3 colleges impacted in April of 2022. Rockingham was one, and unfortunately I don't have her video on here, but Gretchen Parrish, who works at Rockingham, will tell you that was not one of her finest days when she came in and realized they were encrypted. And they really had a robust system, but it just goes to show it doesn't matter how robust you are. It doesn't matter if you're a small college or a big college. When a hacker decides to attempt to break in, doesn't matter who you are, they'll get in. And it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And of course, I've got some additional stuff on there. How many of you know about Gaston Community College? The original presentation I did over the summer, that slide was left blank intentionally because at that point we were not allowed to speak about Gaston. I can tell you I was deployed on site during the Gaston event. It's surreal to watch the CIO, the president, the business office, all of them come together and realize that they have actually been attacked. They're a smaller school. Nobody thinks about the small schools. They actually came in, had encryption on 10 of their servers, and they were lucky enough that they were actually able to continue classes even if with paper and pen. Moodle was still up. They were actually able to still log in for that, so that was a plus for them. But they are still in recovery. Unfortunately, they had some file servers that were exfiltrated with student information, employee information. And I'm sure they'll continue to see repercussions from that probably throughout the next year. And of course, this is the last slide. So since 2019, 15 colleges have been involved in 8 impactful events. Impactful events include compromised services and systems that cause a loss of college resources to users. So maybe Moodle was down, maybe Colleague was down, maybe Informer was down, maybe their website was defaced. But the point is they were not able to provide services to their employees or students during that time frame. 6 of these events included ransomware. Can you imagine how much money that costs the college, their cybersecurity insurance, not to mention the employees and students that were affected? So why are we a target? The amount and the type of sensitive information that we store and share, social security numbers, student aid, financial transactions. You don't think about that, but when a student pays online through self-service, it's a financial transaction. How do they get information about their financial aid? Through self-service. A lot of people don't realize that, and they don't think about it during the time frame, but those are very impactful. And of course, money. Why does anyone do anything they do? For money. One .edu account with password sells for $10 on the dark web. How many of you know what the dark web is? Or you think you do? Okay. So simply put, the dark web is just an intranet for hackers. You normally will not find it if you do a Google search for it. It's highly infiltratable. I can't say that word, so I apologize. But $10 on the dark web. Think about how much money they can make with that. So let's talk about the dark web. So over 41,000 credentials belonging to faculty, staff, and students have been identified this year alone. And the year's not over. That have been listed for sale on the dark web. Why do you think that's the case? Because a lot of people reuse their employee email addresses when they sign up for stuff. They also reuse passwords. Now, I'm sure you guys haven't done that, right? How many of you have a list under your keyboard of all your passwords? Don't raise your hand. So Caldwell has had 708 credentials posted. That includes employee and student accounts. All 58 colleges plus the system office have credentials posted. So 708, how many of you are wondering if it's you? Those are things you need to think about when you sign up for stuff. In addition to that, please don't use the same password over and over. Please don't use the numbers in front and then switch them to the back. Change it completely. So risk of compromised accounts. They're much easier to exploit once they have your account. That will allow them to additional vulnerabilities. Once they get in, it's hard to get them out. Impacts of compromised accounts can vary, but phishing, how many of you have ever received a phishing email? Everybody in this room should raise their hand. Everyone receives some type of phishing email, whether it be through your personal or your regular .edu email account. Data disclosure. Think about all the data your username and password can access. Moodle, colleague, self-service, Informer, email, everything. And ransomware. One college ransomware attack started with 2 compromised students' accounts. It's that simple. Clicking on one phishing email can exfiltrate a virus that just runs in the background through a process. It gives them a door in. And you don't realize how simple clicking on one email can impact your day. So what is ransomware? Simple terms, it's a bad actor trying to gain access to the network. They're going to go in, they're going to exfiltrate your data, and they're going to sell it to the highest bidder. How many of you know that community colleges cannot pay ransomware hackers or attackers? That is true. Colleges are not allowed to pay the ransom. So what's happened in the past, you don't pay the ransom, they leak all of your information on the dark web. And then additional attackers get a hold of that and try to exfiltrate again. So it's just an ongoing cycle. So how does ransomware impact a college? Every event is different, and that's completely true. It depends on what's happening once you're on site. It depends on how many systems are impacted. It depends on how many users are impacted. Some events, colleges were able to come back from due to backups. Some events, it was completely greenfield, which means they rebuilt everything from scratch. When the National Guard and the strike team come on your campus, when I say it's surreal, it's very surreal. It's like having the Army just come in and unpack and bring in all these cute little briefcases and all these nice little network pieces of equipment. And then they start like plugging in and going all over all your systems, your user accounts, everything. Once they go through the forensic, if they cannot determine point of entry, they will push for a greenfield. which means all servers are rebuilt, all desktops, all laptops, rebuilt from scratch, no backups. Think about how many of you are sitting in here. How many of you have a desktop or a laptop? How many servers the college has? That's a lot of information, it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of lost resources. But it can happen. Recovery can take weeks, months, it can even take years. And as I stated earlier, if you talk to Lee from Richmond, he will tell you they're still in recovery. No one that's ever suffered an event says, hey, we're 100% now, because they're not. There's always an issue somewhere. Oh, wrong slide, wrong button. So, opening discussion. How would you describe your current cybersecurity resilience posture? How many of you think you're secure? How many of you think your personal information is secure? I'm glad nobody raised their hands, because it's not. As I stated earlier, this is a college that was impacted. This is Central Piedmont Community College, and this is Dr. Candy Diedelmeyer. She's actually going to explain to you, well, she'll go over how they recovered from a ransomware event and how they felt during the entire process. So let's hear from her. Oh. It's not working, Susan. I have to open it up in the browser. Did it open? Mm-mm. There it goes. Okay. I had to open it back. Sorry about that. I should have.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. And I find it unfortunate that I've become a little bit of an expert in this area. So our cyber event really did impact the campus of Central Piedmont in so many ways. First, to know that it's happened to you and that in some ways you've become a victim of something that you're not in control of has a personal feeling to many people. It certainly has impacted, it does impact your processes, it impacts your business, your willingness and ability to serve your customers, but there's an emotional part of it, especially for what happened at our campus, loss of work, and for some faculty, 30 years worth of teaching and learning and a knowledge base of a repertoire of work, as you might say, kind of like their life work, and you can't get that back. And so it has a number of things, I think, in terms of how it has impacted the campus. So from a business continuity standpoint, the readiness of that, and it does try whether or not you are prepared to come back. And then just the impact on your ability to serve your customers. And for a community college, that is really the common denominator of everything we do. We're in that service orientation business. And to know that for a period of time, there's a dead stop to that really makes you assess first how important it is and how important you are to your community when you're not able to deliver. And then secondarily, just all of us come at this work because we are very service oriented, and not being able to deliver that for a period of time until you find your bearings and kind of get things reboosted and re-going is a tremendous feeling, one that I hope we never have to recreate or experience again.
And you kind of talked about being ready. If you could go back in time, what would you do differently to prepare for the inevitable?
Yeah, well, I don't believe in time travel, and I don't believe looking back over your shoulder. And so I want to, if I can, I'll take this and think about it as a go forward, right? I'm really much more of a windshield kind of leader. So I would break it down into a couple things. So I made a couple. One is risk assessment. I think even as Central Piedmont, we've done some risk assessments over the years, making sure you're doing risk assessments and understanding the risks and vulnerabilities of your colleges, both your systems, your networks, even your processes, and those crucial assets that you have. I think it's important to have a clear understanding of what your most valuable assets are, and what the what the possible impact of any type of breach, small or large, could have on those assets. I think about employee training. You know, we've deployed phishing training. We've deployed now cybersecurity, even training, even in a more robust fashion. But just really being diligent in ensuring that all of your employees are aware of cybersecurity. What are those best practices? Understanding the potential risks. And look, we all have to engage in so much training. And sometimes to ask faculty and staff, professional staff, to engage in one more level can be frustrating sometimes. It's a lot. But I think as a go forward and looking in the windshield, this is one piece of a training that I think people have embraced, and continuing to test our systems through that training. How we're doing, what level of readiness do we have in a go forward fashion, especially around what are potential threats, not just from phishing, but any suspicious activity, and looking at security of our systems. Again, that brand awareness, that service orientation of who we are to our customers and to our community, and thinking about it from a security lens in a very different way. You know, we oftentimes require our, from a security standpoint, our physical security on campus to think about that and protecting physical assets and people. But then we think ITS is going to take care of that from a security standpoint of all of our systems. Until you've lived through an event like this, and you really do have to make sure that it's incumbent upon all of us to kind of have a different way of thinking, a different way of behaving, and a different way of interacting with technology in order for us to remain viable. And not just survive, but thrive, and to really remain viable. The next thing I would say is make sure your incident response plan, that it's comprehensive, that it's established, that it's clear, that you have multiple entities on campus that understand what that incident response plan looks like. And that plan should have protocols for reporting and analyzing any event or potential breach, as well as who has roles and responsibilities. I'd say some lessons learned about, you know, whose role and responsibility is it to make some calls as you walk through an event like that. And then for the next time, or even if it's an event where you're looking at a potential breach, you know, whose responsibility is it? Who do you report that to, and who gets to make some critical decisions in terms of how do you move the institution forward through that process? And I'll maybe land on this one. I'm sure I know you have some other questions, but certainly making sure your technology and your infrastructure remain up to date. I know oftentimes that costs a lot. You are going to pay for it one way or the other. We are going to have to either find out how to make investments in technology and in our infrastructure on an ongoing basis, whether it's cybersecurity, that technology infrastructure, your systems. You're either going to do that the way you try to detect things. You're either going to pay for those things and make for those investments in the windshield, continuing with that analogy, or if and when something happens to your institution, I promise you the investments that you will make post-incident will be extreme. They are extraordinary. And then you're also dealing with increases in cybersecurity insurance as well as other things. So those are really important. And then I would just say, don't ever forget continuous improvement. This is not going to ever be over in a global digital environment that's changing every single day. So cyber security threats are constant, they're evolving. There's always something new coming at us for us to try to deflect or not experience. And so those threats and risks are out there, and making sure your ITS team, your faculty and your staff, and really your system set ongoing continuous improvement. This is an area where you cannot become complacent. And so that would be my message in terms of not if I could go back in time, but as I think about lessons learned and thinking about the windshield of where we're headed, those are the things that I would encourage colleges and your leaders to think about.
And then you kind of went directly into our final question, which is, what advice would you offer to our academic leaders as they prepare for such an event?
Well, so one of the things I think our academic leaders, and I will hone in for just a minute on really faculty and the teaching and learning process. I believe that that is our deliverable, right? That's the thing that our consumers want to consume. That's our business platform. And our ability to make sure that regardless of any event, whether it's COVID or we're talking today about a cyber event or something that impacts our systems, we have to make sure that we're ready to continue to deliver on mission for our consumers, regardless of our business platform and across all of those. And so I would just encourage our academic leaders to think about preparedness in a different way. Where are your repositories of your knowledge base, both where they sit internally, perhaps they need to sit externally as well, and thinking about it from a business strategy standpoint. Sometimes in higher ed, we're not comfortable with that. But what if you cannot deliver to market? There's a lot of competition out there. And we've now, at this college, at Central Piedmont, we've experienced that twice, and really thinking through that in very real ways to make sure that we're delivering on mission and that our consumers can actually engage in the business platform that we offer to so many, tens of thousands, is really imperative. And spending time thinking about that, not just from a process orientation, but a deliverable, as well as the high value of what we do and how to care for that in very meaningful ways. How does that course platform look? Where does it sit? Where are the materials that you need to deliver? How have you partnered? Where are the repositories? What are your policies? And what are your policies when you can't meet or you have to meet differently? We've addressed some of those because of, again, COVID, or we've had a cyber event. But just making sure you've looked at those things from that academic dashboard, from mission essence of what you need to deliver into the marketplace, I think is really critical. Again, using that not to just survive coming out of any event, but how do you thrive and continue to innovate and meet the mission and meet what your customers need. I think it's really crucial. Yeah, the last thing I would say, and I know many colleges do this, sometimes we don't do it as regularly as we'd like to, and that would be make sure that you have somebody that's independent to come in and take a real close look and do an audit regularly of your systems. To not only think about, is your college meeting what might be a compliance requirement or an industry best practice, but really the effectiveness of what you've built. And is it up to date, and is it aligned with what your college's risk management goals are, for sure. But sometimes we always need another entity to come in and look over our shoulder and say, is this the best you can do? Here are your risks. Here are the maybe even holes in your environment, things we don't see. When you're really close to something, sometimes we don't look at it with that same critical lens. I've heard some of my colleagues say they do that on a regular basis. It is an investment. And oftentimes folks say we just can't afford to do that, or we are not. This is an investment. You have to find a way to do it, and then pay attention to the results and execute on some of those results so that you can get ahead of what may come, and that your college is well taken care of. So I do think that independent audit and critical assessment of your systems and your practices and your policies, and whether or not you're living those out, is really, really critical for institutions to think about.
Okay, so let's walk through a tabletop exercise. Let's walk through an actual ransomware event. Oh, I promise I'll get it right before we're done. So let me give you a little background. This is September 16th. You're in your fall semester. Classes have already started. 8:20 a.m. Your information security officer, which in this case will be Susan Wooten, receives a bulletin warning about CryptoLocker. It's a form of malware associated with ransomware infections. The malware restricts access to infected computer files and allows the perpetrator to demand that the victim provide a payment in order to decrypt and recover their files. The malware also has the ability to find and encrypt files located within shared network drives, USB drives, external hard drives, network file shares, and even some cloud storage drives. It can infect multiple computers on the same network and may spread through fake email attachments or bogus links. At 10 o'clock, September 25th, a faculty member at your institution receives an email from what appears to be a counterpart at Appalachian State University. The email suggests following a link to review a hiring announcement about the new academic dean at the university. The employee clicks on the link in the email and is directed to a non-Appalachian State University website. First mistake. Less than an hour later, your IT department begins to receive inquiries from employees about several cosmetic changes to your main website. The commenters note that a popular link now directs people to an unrelated website. How many of you out there have actually clicked on a link? I like how nobody's raising their hands. I have. I'll be the first to admit it. But you know what I did? I let IT know. And the reason I let IT know is, number one, you save face and say, hey, I'm sorry, I clicked on this, never should have, but I did, and I want you to be aware. Because you need to inform IT. The quicker you inform IT, the quicker they can go through the response mechanism to determine how far that malice actor may have gotten into the network. So your due diligence to say, hey, I screwed up, they will greatly appreciate. They're not going to be upset. They just need to be made aware. Let's see. By 1:30 p.m. the same day, the IT department receives a phone call from the business office that Informer is not accessible. Additional calls to the IT department describe difficulties accessing files. An initial investigation points to a phishing email sent around 9:59 a.m. That phishing email, that one that was clicked on, sets this entire chain of events. So basically, email was clicked on, computer virus has established a foothold within the college servers, and it appears to have spread throughout the network, hitting shared drives in campus departments. Access to the network and shared drives is restricted at 1:57 p.m. and are available in read-only mode. Multiple employees report that their computers have locked and display a message referencing CryptoLocker and demanding a payment of 5 Bitcoin to decrypt their files. Many of the encrypted files include the instructional materials of faculty and essential files for the business office. By 2:15 p.m. the same day, IT staff discover that several essential servers have also been encrypted. Moodle, hosted on-site, self-service, Aviso, Informer, file shares, and shared drives. So in this scenario, what is your role and what are your immediate concerns and priorities? What are you thinking? Are you thinking about your students? Are you thinking about, oh God, I hope I backed up my files? Are you thinking about, when was the last time I backed up my files? Are you thinking about classes being affected? Can you still continue to teach? Does this affect your life safety system? If one of the servers was fire alarm system, would you still be able to hold classes? See, these are things that I realize this is not just a strictly IT group, but a member from faculty can think about how they're going to continue with their classes if Moodle's not available. They can also determine how they're going to communicate with their students. The business office can go through the process and figure out how they're going to pay accounts receivable or accept payments during this time frame. Each one of you have a role during this process that you can help the college with. It's not strictly an IT function. What next steps or actions should occur in response to this scenario? Does your college have an incident response plan? And do you know who is responsible for executing that plan? If you don't know, she's sitting right here, Susan Wooten. Throw up that hand, Susan. Let everybody know. How will you communicate the incident to faculty, staff, and students? Moodle's down. How are you going to let them know? Regroup? Something else? Social media? These are things you need to think about. Who talks to your press? Does anybody know? Amy knows. Amy talks to the press. That has actually happened. Press gets wind of a ransomware event. Students have posted it on social media, and the press does show up on site. And they're happy to hold out a microphone to anybody that will talk to them. So please be aware, Amy's the person responsible. What areas and services are affected? Can you continue to serve your students? If Moodle were down, could you still work? If colleague, not that that's affected here, but if colleague were down, what would you do? What about Informer? How many of you use Informer? How many of you have backed up the stuff that you use Informer for? Like you get an Informer report, or you set up an Informer schedule. Do you guys have those backups? It's not on IT to do that. Those are things to think about. In addition to that, Moodle, your classes. It's not on distance learning. I know they do it, but you need to think about your courses and things that you've posted and assignments you've given and your syllabuses and documentation. As faculty members, you should be able to pack up your own information because it's your information. This is the last video. This is actually Dr. Heather Hill, and she's from Central Piedmont Community College, and she'll speak about the ransomware event and how it affected their faculty.
Hello, I am Heather Hill. I serve as the Provost and Chief Academic Officer at Central Piedmont. So in looking at what happened with our students, so students who were a couple of weeks into the semester lost everything up to that point. That included grades, submissions, all of the content. So they were struggling. We addressed that very quickly and assured students. We said that they would not be penalized for anything that was lost. We would work with them to catch up, but we still wanted to finish our semester. So as we were able to stand back up a different LMS, we began using Brightspace and tried to transition some content as much as we could from other sources into that LMS. Students were still forced to sort of start over. But in addition to the student loss, what they lost that semester, you know, I can't undersell what our faculty lost, because much of the work that our faculty put into their courses was housed solely in the LMS. There was not a backup copy somewhere else. Now, our situation may be unique, but part of our recovery process was to wipe desktops. So anything that was housed locally on a computer on campus was also lost to our faculty and staff. So the loss was horrible for our students. It was also horrible in many cases for our faculty. And in addition, I can't forget about staff in the instruction area and outside, but even our academic affairs staff lost workflow processes and forms and creation and, you know, just access to a lot of the things that hold us together instructionally. So not only losing our LMS for the current, but as you can imagine, losing, you know, semesters past, courses that were not actively being taught that semester, the loss was tremendous in terms of instruction for students, for faculty, and for staff. In addition, around instruction, we temporarily lost communication. So one avenue that was affected for us was with our email stream. So there was a short period of time where we were not able to communicate effectively in the early stages. And that was tremendous for us because, as you can imagine, many of our backup plans talked about, okay, what our lines of communication would be, who would contact whom. And that was difficult for us because at the time, you know, we had lost communication. So it's important that as we think about what you might lose, it's important that it's not just this is one plan, that everything will go in this one location, because what if that's not a possibility for you? So we also did not anticipate the overwhelming effect that the emotion would have on absolutely everything. I mean, we were devastated, we were disappointed, we were scared, we were grieving. All of the emotions came into play. Quite honestly, I was angry. I was mad at whomever was doing this to us, and I don't want to undersell the importance of making sure that you are prepared to handle all of the emotion that comes along with it. As with any disaster or emergency, your first response is to recover. And I think we did as best we could. I think we did a good job with that. But I think the emotional piece of it, the emotional baggage, just the grief associated with that in some ways is still lingering, that the desire to be heard and acknowledged and to be able to grieve together as a group for the things that we lost was very important. And not just for employees. Sometimes we think about our students as transient, because in a 2-year environment, students aren't with us for long periods of time. Most of our students are here a couple of years and then they're gone. But for the students who were here, college is their safe place in their community, and they had lost something. So even if we think about it as being a semester's worth of work or a partial semester worth of work, they still feel that loss very genuinely. So the emotion that was tied to the event, we don't want to undersell. We want to make sure that when we think about how to recover, how to move forward, that we are still not in such a hurry to try to get things back, that we don't take time to acknowledge sort of that emotional piece of it. So in instruction, LMS was a big hit. Anything that was housed locally on devices, I think, was a big hit for us, because many of us do collect our things digitally, and there's not always a backup copy on paper somewhere. There's not always a paper grade book somewhere. So I think the loss to instruction was, yes, LMS content. Yes, there was some things on our desktops. But a loss that's a little harder for me to quantify, I think, is that that sense of security that's lost. I hope you've never had your car broken into or your home broken into, but whenever something is breached, you lose a little bit of that sense of security. So as a college, when someone breached our security measures, we have a little bit of that angst. So our security is threatened in some ways. So that was a little harder for us to address, I think, because we all acknowledged it and we all felt it. But I will say that our ITS team is phenomenal. The one then, how it's evolved now, I do think we're in a much better place now. But my CIO is fabulous in many ways, and he keeps reminding me that there's a spectrum between security and convenience. And where are we willing to be on that spectrum? If we want to be super secure, that comes with some inconveniences, I guess. Or if we want things to be super convenient, then that lessens our security somewhat. As you can imagine, right after an event happens and we're trying to recover, we are much more toward that lock everything down. We want to be super secure, never let this happen to us again. But as we move out, as time occurs, I think we found ourselves realizing we can't lock everything down. We still have to operate. We still have to take care of our students and take care of business. So it's been a growing opportunity for us to try to find out where we're comfortable on that spectrum between security and convenience.
So after after experiencing an event, how have you and your team changed the way that you prepare for what some would call the inevitable? A lot of folks are now saying that it's not not when, but if you experience an attack. How has that changed how you prepare for such a thing?
So if you had asked me that question before the event, I would say, of course we're prepared. We have training. We tell people not to click on links and emails, and we're very secure. We protect our passwords. My answer would have been very different. Since the event, I recognized that the training we had was good, but maybe not quite as meaningful as it should have been. It is now very applicable and very practical to us because we have been in that situation. So I would be remiss if I did not say redundancy, redundancy, redundancy. But that's not just an ITS responsibility. So yes, I lost sleep in the early days thinking, why did we not back up differently or back up in a different way? Or if only, we could go back and do some things a little differently. But I say that to say that it's not just about the redundant systems, but it's also the practice of being redundant, of the things that are important we don't just have saved in one place. For example, for our faculty, as you update courses in whatever your LMS is, for us at the time it was Blackboard, now it's Brightspace, but as you make all these updates and create these wonderful videos, content, tutorials, whatever, don't just keep them in the LMS or on your hard drive at work. Take advantage of shared drives. Now, at Central Piedmont, we've had shared drives, network drives, cloud drives for a very long time. Were we using them? Probably not as much as we are now. So maybe that's one takeaway, that we ensure the things we believe are really happening. So if we think people are using those network drives, maybe we check to make sure that we are saving things to shared drives, cloud drives, and we have a little bit of redundancy, not just with our systems, but with our practice. Another thing that is very important is the way that our training is being delivered. We have growing pains. You would think an institution that has been through an event like this would, really be on our toes. And we are doing great things about trying to resist some of the phishing attempts that come in through email and trying to do our best with our technology practices. So that's sort of one end of it. But one end that I think we had not anticipated is not just policy procedure, but the way that on the front end we share information. I'll give you an example. So my CIO has me terrified to open a link in an email. To the point where sometimes I message him directly, hey, Rick, is this real? Do I really open this? But in all seriousness, I think some of the training needs to be for us, not just in what we open, but in what we send and what we share. So should we be sharing documents from a network printer that allows us to email people directly? Should we really be doing that? Because sometimes that comes across very generic. Would a better practice be email it to yourself, add some context that makes it seem legitimate before sharing? Because as a college, I think there are several times that we just assume, oh, they'll know that's real, that's for me. But because we're in a heightened sense of attacks and people trying to make bad things happen, I think both our proactive approach to how we manage our day-to-day business and not just how we receive and react to that is important. I also think a valuable lesson in this process for us has been you have to be willing to accept help. That when disasters occur, there are agencies that come in to help, and we are so very thankful for all the help we receive from our system office, from our sister colleges, from external agencies. But you have to be willing to ask for help, accept help, and it's very humbling. So we are very grateful for all of the people and the entities that stepped in to help us. But every attack is different. I don't think we can anticipate what our attack, and Julie, I like the way you say, it's not if you're attacked, but when you're attacked in some way, because everyone's attack might be a little different. So we like to have a plan A and think, yes, we have redundant systems, we're good. Or yes, we've provided training, we're good. Because you don't know exactly what your attack might look like, you really need to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. I don't think we can prepare for everything that's happened, but I do believe that when it happens again, we'll be better prepared. We'll have systems in place that stop it sooner. And I think eventually we'll be in an environment as a system, but definitely at Central Piedmont as a college, where when it comes, when we're attacked next, we'll be ready for them.
And just finally, do you have any words of encouragement for our academic leaders who are beginning the process of thinking about business continuity?
So be patient, be kind to yourself, and be kind with your faculty. because your faculty really do own content and delivery. And when we think about when COVID struck and we converted everything to online very quickly, we really were relying on our faculty to step in and be able to move content from in-person to online and really shape that content. I think this is a similar lift. When we talk to our faculty about we need to make sure that our instruction is protected and backed up and redundant, that's not just to save everything one place. So I think it's a be patient steps. Encourage your faculty as they're creating new content, for example, to save that content in a secondary location, probably on a shared drive, a cloud drive, a network drive, whatever that is, but maybe in baby steps. So moving forward as we create new things, maybe that's what you make redundant and back up. But I think one of the biggest things is you need to be able to trust your people and have the relationship of trust, not just between you and your faculty, but between instruction and ITS, between instruction and your business office and your student affairs office. I think that across the college, we all need to work on relationships, because we could find ourselves in trouble if we say that this is a responsibility of just one area, right? We like to think ITS does keep us secure. Yes, that is true, but it's not just their responsibility, because I think that's probably the big lesson here, because it's not something that ITS did that opened a door. It was a bad actor somewhere that came into our systems, but we all have a responsibility to help man the fort, so to speak, that it is all of our responsibilities. So we don't want to assume that other areas are responsible for their piece and I'm only responsible for instruction. So as we are preparing and building our plans, make them collaborative. So be working with the other teams on your campus with your business continuity plans. And if you have a department that handles those for you, even better. But work with your experts in those areas. Take it in baby steps. Take your low-hanging fruit first and ease your way into a more comprehensive plan. But be kind to yourself. It's a lot of work, but it is definitely necessary.
Okay, so what is your role and how can you increase your security posture? It's not just on IT. Implement a maintenance and patch schedule. That's not just for Collie. That's for all your critical infrastructure. Update essential systems, including your desktops, laptops, your browsers, your applications. Remove access to on-site shared network drives, USBs, and external drives. Implement least privilege, which means if you don't need to know, you don't need to know. Back up your important data. Don't depend on someone else to do that for you. It's your data. Back up your stuff. Provide security training, which I'm sure Susan already does with know before and phishing emails, and create a business continuity plan, which I think Susan said you guys have already started or are looking at. All I've got left is Q&A, Susan. I'll let you do yours.
Thank you. I know we're running short on time, so I will try to make this quick. All right, you guys will remember that on kickoff, I made an announcement that we were going to discontinue the use of USB and external drives on October 2nd. So I wanted to take just a few minutes to answer some of the questions that some of you've had, maybe go into detail just a little bit more as to why we're doing that and why we're torturing you and making your life miserable. But as I said, you won't be able to use them anymore in most places on campus on October 2nd. Now, this is in response to scans that we had by the North Carolina National Guard last year Also, recommendations that come from the system office. You just heard Lisa say it. It's happening at other schools as well. We're actually one of the last to put this ban into effect, and I have been hesitant, I will admit that. All of those schools that you saw that were attacked by ransomware, that's one of the first things they did. They took away the ability to use any USBs or external drives on campus. As I was putting some things together last week, I came across an article from Sophos. This is a top security software company. And they discussed why it's beneficial to discontinue the use of USBs and external drives. They did an analysis of lost USB keys. They actually purchased 100 at a public transport utilities auction, and they found that 66% of those were infected with malware. Many of those had personal files and work-related files on them. Not a single one was encrypted, requiring a password. Did you guys know you can do that with your USB and your external drive? You can actually set it up so that it needs a password. I don't do that. I've never done that. So any of the files that were on those USBs could be accessed and used. So it isn't just malware and ransomware that we need to worry about, and you hear me yell about that all the time. It's also data protection. So I took this picture at my desk, and my desk looks really dirty too, and I'm sorry. But as I was putting this little PowerPoint together, I just grabbed the USB drives that I had on my desk and threw them down and took a picture of them. And right now I have 3 or 4 that are laying there. I have no idea what's on them really. I don't know, maybe some PowerPoints, maybe some documents. I do know they're not encrypted, so if anybody were to come in or gain access to my office, they could pick one up. I'd probably never know that it was gone. So that's a data risk. That's a risk that we need to manage. I'm guessing that a lot of you are in the same boat. I remember the days when I would find a USB on campus and I would think it belonged to a student. So what would I do? I would plug it in to see if I could figure out who it belonged to. We don't want to do that now. Some of these bad actors are actually planting these USB keys, hoping that you will plug them in. Because one thing that happens with a USB, if it's got a program on there, it's executable, it will run automatically. All it requires is for you to give it physical access to the network. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna move our files to OneDrive. I know that you're excited about that. I bet you've done that already. One thing that makes it safer, it's not foolproof. We don't know for sure after a ransomware event if our OneDrives will be safe. We hope they will be. But it does require you to authenticate to access your files, so that's a lot safer. This protects you, this protects the college, and you can have your files multiple places just like you can with a USB. So one of the questions that a lot of people are asking me is, well, how much space do I have on OneDrive? Is it enough for me? Everyone has 1 terabyte by default. We can increase that if we need to. We hope we don't have to. For most of us, 1 terabyte is going to be more than you're ever going to need. But there are some instances, like in marketing, with all the photos they have. The TV studio has come up. We've had to talk about that. You can imagine the videos that they store are very large. So there are going to be some exceptions. We're going to have to work through some things individually. And I'm betting some of you faculty members, you might have videos or maybe some things you've done for class that you know that they're very large and they may not be able to fit on OneDrive. We will work with you. We will talk you through this, make it as easy as we can. Also, we have our texts that are coming around. They've been working on this the last few weeks and they'll continue until October to make sure that OneDrive is set up properly and it's backing up on your computer. Now, you will be responsible for watching it every now and then. If it gets signed out or it's not working, you'll start getting messages because mine will start popping up and telling me, your password's wrong, you got to re-authenticate. So you do have to pay attention to it and make sure that it's working. Students, what will this mean for them? The good news is in our labs, we have a software called Deep Freeze, which many of you are familiar with, that's loaded on there. It doesn't allow for anything to copy to the hard drive. You will be able to use an USB or an external drive in the labs. So you as a faculty member, if you bring something from home and you're like, crap, I can't plug it in my office computer, run to a lab, go to the library, you'll be able to plug it in, print it, email it to yourself, whatever you need to do. The issue with your office is you guys know that you're able to save things in your office. You're able to write to your drives. You have access to that. So that's why we can't allow it on your office machines. But in the labs, on the Aquas boards, the clear touch panels that have the USBs, you'll be able to use them there too. So those are perfectly safe. And I know I ran through that because I know that we're all trying to get to lunch. But if you have specific questions, I won't I probably won't answer any specific ones right here in front of everybody, but I bet all of you, maybe you're thinking, well, what about this? And what about this file? Or how's this gonna work for me? Call me, call Greg, call one of the computer techs. We would love to help you through this and make it as easy as possible. Like I said, we're not the first to do this. And some of the feedback that I've gotten from other colleges across the state, of course, it's very painful at first. It's like those 14-character passwords. That's no big deal now, right? See? But yeah, I know that it's painful, but we will be able to get through it, and it'll be no problem in a few months. It'll be like it never happened. So thank you guys today. Thank you to Lisa for being here. We really appreciate her. I feel so much better knowing that she's on our campus and that she's a text or a call away if anything should happen. And just like she said, guys, if you click things, if you think you've done something, we will not be mad at you. We will celebrate you. We will tell everybody how wonderful you are. Call us if you think you did something, because we want to know early. So thanks, guys. I think it's time for lunch.